and welcome to Your Coaching Journey, a podcast for doctors about coaching. Whether you're a coaching doctor, a doctor who is learning to coach, or a doctor who would like to build coaching into your professional life, then this is the podcast for you. Hello, I'm Helen Leathers, and with me today is my co-host and business partner, Tom Dillon. Hi, Tom, how are you?
I'm very well today, thank you very much. Very excited to be doing another podcast. And how are you doing?
I'm good. So as we mentioned in our introductory podcast, we intend to interview coaches about their coaching journey. And today is the first of those interviews. And I'm going to be introducing you to and interviewing Tom Dillon.
Hurrah!
We thought you'd like to get to know us a bit better first. So Tom is a transformational coach, a coach trainer, a coach supervisor, and a coaching mentor. And he heads up our training on the Doctor's Transformational Coaching Diploma. So, Tom, tell me, how long have you been coaching now?
I have been coaching for just over 14 years. So I started my coaching career with a course at Warwick University, a certificate in coaching, so that got me started. At the same time, I was doing a psychology degree, so I was running both things together while still running a business. But that's whetted my appetite for all things coaching and all things psychology, and that's really been my life ever since. And I've never really stopped learning. I went on to do, after doing a certificate in coaching, I went on to do a diploma in coaching, then I went on to do a master's in coaching, then I went on to do a supervision qualification. So it has been 14 years of learning, but my appetite for learning about coaching and psychology hasn't waned at all, really. So I still see that as a lifelong journey of learning.
So lots of back-to-back training.
Yeah.
So once you finished your training, how did you get started in coaching as a career and transition away from what you were doing?
Well, really, I didn't wait till after I'd finished my training. So during my first course, I was offered some work. The tutor on that course recognised something in me that I could coach, and he had someone in the organisation that needed some coaching, and he thought we would be a good fit. So I was offered that coaching assignment, and that went very well. And that ended up with me doing some leadership coaching through that organisation. And at the same time, I did another course around personality profiling, and someone on that course seemed to like me and said, "Oh, I've got someone needs coaching." And that led to another coaching assignment, and they were all being paid for. So that was my introduction into the world of paid for coaching. And that's just carried on ever since. And I've always done a little bit of training alongside it. So I've had that dual track to my career. But coaching has been constant throughout that time.
Excellent. So it sounds like you're doing quite a lot of organisational or workplace coaching. Is that mostly what you do?
Yeah, probably not so much now. Certainly in the early days, that was all I was doing. And the idea of going out looking for individual clients was a little bit daunting. So actually being connected with an organisation that had people that needed coaching was a good space for me. And it led to regular work. So, yeah. So
people could be forgiven for thinking that coaching is coaching, but there are different styles and different approaches. We talked about the person-centred approach last time. How would you summarise your approach to coaching?
I would suggest that my coaching is integrative. So I'm still tied to that person-centred approach. I still think that underpins my coaching. That doesn't go away. And sometimes I think, I'm no longer that. I'm a Gestalt coach. So that's a different approach to coaching. But actually, when I stop and think about it, my coaching is still very much about sitting and listening to the person in front of me, not getting too involved unless I have to. So I want them to be doing their thinking. So that person-centred approach still underpins it. But then I will bring in a solution-focused approach where I think it's necessary. I introduce transactional analysis models. I will do a bit of cognitive behavioural coaching, and as I mentioned, Gestalt, which is all about experimenting in the coaching room. So I do quite a bit of that these days, and I love to experiment, have a bit of fun with coaching. And if something doesn't work, I don't think, oh God, that's terrible exercise, we won't do that again. I just accept that it just hasn't worked in that moment. So we move on to something else and try a different way of creating that change that people want for themselves. So that's where I'm ending up after 14 years and thinking, oh, well, what's the next thing I need to explore? I've explored lots of different approaches, build lots of them into my coaching when I feel it's appropriate.
And it's not about thinking, oh, now I'm going to use a positive psychology intervention, or now I'm going to use cognitive behavioural coaching. It kind of must flow for you now that you've got that experience, when you recognise what needs to be used in that moment.
Yes, and I always approach a coaching conversation ready to just listen to whatever is coming into the room from the coachee. So I don't have an agenda when I walk into the coaching room. Even if I'm coaching someone on a regular basis, I don't think, oh, next time we'll do this, because I don't know what's going to be going on for them next time. It is very person-centred in the fact that they come with their agenda and I work with whatever's going on for them.
And we'll probably be covering quite a lot of those approaches in upcoming episodes.
Yeah, and obviously on our Doctor's Transformational Coaching Diploma, all of those approaches are what we teach. Mm-hmm. So anyone coming to the programme would get a taster of all of those different approaches.
So the other thing that listeners could be forgiven for thinking about coaching is that it's all about goals, action and accountability. And I know for both of us, it's far more than that. So I wondered if you'd like to share your thoughts on accountability with our listeners.
Yeah, I love the word accountability. And I did some research a few years ago where I invited coaches to complete a survey, and I asked them whether they used accountability in their coaching, and almost without question they all said, yes, I use accountability. And then I said, well, what happens when someone doesn't do what they said they were going to do? And they go, oh, well, we'll have a chat about it, but I don't get upset about it. So to me, that's not accountability. That's just walking alongside someone, supporting them in what they do, and that's my approach to coaching. So I don't offer myself as someone's accountability partner. I'm not going to be holding them to account. I'm not their dad, I'm not their boss. So they have other people in their lives that will hold them to account, but as a coach, I'm there to support them and to, as I say, walk alongside them, keep them going in the direction they want to go in, but going in that direction because they want to go in it, not because I wanted them to go in it.
Yeah. And one of the things, I don't know if you find this, is that people will take action more readily when they know that they're coming back to see you very often.
Yeah, and yes, so that is something that happens, and I'm accepting of that, and say I don't want them to do it because it will please me, but if it just gives them that nudge, okay, I've got that session coming up, so there's a little bit of a time stamp, and they might get it done before that. The only danger I find with that is if they haven't done it, do they then just defer the coaching session because they haven't done it? I was due to see someone yesterday who has now deferred it for 3 weeks, and I have no idea whether that's because he hasn't done what he said he was going to do. I didn't ask him to do anything, but before he left the last session, he said, okay, these are the 4 things I'm going to get done by the time I see you again. I have no attachment to him doing those things. That's for him. But he may feel that, oh, I can't go back and see Tom because I haven't done my things. So there's always that element to it as well, I think.
Mm. Okay, so what would you say is your favourite coaching tool?
My favourite coaching tool is the River of Life. So it's something that I invite all of my coachees to complete before they come to the coaching. So when I do my chemistry session with them, so I always have a chemistry session where we meet and discuss what they would like to get out of the coaching, and I discuss my coaching approach. But at the end of that, I will always offer them that invitation. And that is just an invitation to draw their life out from the time they're born to where they are now as a river, and to plot along that river main events, things that they recall that are interesting. Obviously there are going to be tough times, and they will appear on the river, and good times as well. And there's an awful lot of benefit as a coach to hear people's story of how they've got to where they are now. So I always offer that invitation. Not everyone does it. Sometimes people will come with it folded up and they'll go, not sure I'm ready to share that, and that's absolutely fine. So I'm not insistent that they do it, but it gives me a lot of background information about them, gives me a sense of who they are if they have done it. And sometimes that's done 3 weeks in. They'll come to the first session and say, oh, I haven't done that yet. And maybe that's a trust thing. Maybe they just want to get to know me a little bit better before they bring the river along, but it's something that I do enjoy. I enjoy listening to people, so hearing their story, and I always find it a privilege to listen into how they've got to be who they are.
And in the sharing of that story, that builds trust and rapport with you as well.
Yeah, I think once someone has shared their life story with you, there's not a lot they won't tell you, really. So I think absolutely the rapport and trust is there once they've talked through their river of life.
So, what's your favourite question to ask a coachee?
My favourite question always is, what would you like to have happen? And we talked on an earlier podcast about the person-centred approach and that listening to their story. As just mentioned, if they're talking through their river of life, I'm happy to listen for as long as it takes for them to tell their story. I want to understand their situation. But there comes a point where it's time to move on and we want to move forward. So actually asking that question, what would you like to have happen, cuts through all the noise of what's going on for them. Now, they don't always answer it with what they would like to have happen. So they might say, well, it's really difficult because this is going on, and go back to telling their story. And what I will do in that situation is to say, and what would you like to have happen? And we might still get a bit of, well, it's just really difficult. And then again, I will ask, and what would you like to have happen? So it might take 3 or 4 times of asking the question, but eventually we get to the point they go, well, what I really want is this. And then we've got something to move towards, rather than trying to remedy the situation. We have something new that we're working towards, and that's what coaching is all about, the moving forward.
So would you say anyone could benefit from coaching?
Yes, anyone can benefit from coaching as long as they want to be coached. I don't think coaching is something that you can force upon people, and I see this within organisations. As I've said before, I have spent 14 years coaching within organisations and done some lovely coaching with some lovely people, but occasionally people get sent for coaching. People think that coaching can fix things, and we are working with people to help them move forward, but we can't do it to them. So if they are resistant to the coaching, then we're probably not going to make any progress. There has to be that rapport and trust. They have to know that we're with them on that journey. And if they feel like the organisation is making them do something, they're going to be resistant to it. So we're not going to have an effective relationship. So yeah, anyone can be coached, but they have to want to be coached.
I like that. Coaching isn't something that we can do to people.
Absolutely.
So tell me, what do you do when you're not coaching?
When I'm not coaching these days, I'm spending my time training doctors to become coaches. And that's whether they want to be full-blown coaches and coach in a professional setting, or whether they just want to use coaching skills within their workplace. But that takes up probably more than half of my time now. So that I have that lovely balance of spending time with groups of people, which fills my extroversion tendency, and then I have times where I'm one-to-one with coachees, and that's a lovely space for me to be. I have to channel my inner introvert to be in that space, but I love that combination of doing both.
So, aside from coaching and training, our listeners might want to know what your hobbies or interests are in your personal life.
I have 2 grandchildren, and I love spending time with them, and I see them regularly. I pick my grandson up from school every Friday, so work finishes at 2:00 on a Friday, and that space is blocked off in my calendar, so I always pick him up on a Friday, and I now have a granddaughter, so I like to spend time with her. Beyond that, I'm a keen tennis player, so I'm playing tennis 3 or 4 times a week. My body doesn't like me playing tennis 3 or 4 times a week. I generally spend the other days feeling crumpled from having played tennis. But that's something that I've loved to do. I really found it during lockdown. It was something that we were allowed to do during lockdown. So I started playing with a group of friends, and that's just carried on. So that's kind of my love at the moment. I also dance, not as often as I used to, and lockdown put paid to a lot of that activity. But yeah, I'm a keen dancer as well.
Which is, of course, where we met.
Which is, of course, where we met. Yes.
Thank you, Tom, for telling us a little bit about yourself and about your coaching journey and your coaching approach.
You're very welcome. I've enjoyed that. So next time on this podcast, we'll be looking at a commonly used tool in the coaching room and how it can be both insightful and versatile. So tune in next time to find out more, and you can always subscribe so you never miss an episode. So thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.